All right, guys. Brian Macris here, Home Choice Lending, and I have the pleasure of having Joe Gindi with me, who's turned into a really good friend of mine. Very funny, by the way, just hanging out with the guy. I think he's just a funny guy. He's got a weird way of looking at things, and it's always a nice, refreshing angle, always positive attitude. Today, I just kind of want to, hey, thanks for coming in. He is on the Home Choice Lending team. He's also a real estate agent. So I want to talk a little bit about the real estate stuff right now because the market's kind of all over the place, and we were talking off mic that it's pockets. You were saying, and different pockets in different price points are having different types of things. So what can you tell us and I know everything's going to change next month or next week, but what can you tell us about how you feel about how the market is? And we're seeing contracts with seller paid closing costs. We're seeing FHA being something that somebody will entertain where they wouldn't entertain it in the past. It's not 17 offers in most cases, but I mentioned the pocket. Sometimes it's still really aggressive. So give me a kind of a little snapshot of where you think we are in today's market.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian. It's great being here. So in the market right now, I'm seeing a lot of inventory starting to build up, which is great. Great news for buyers anyway, to have a couple more choices out there to pick from versus the just listed and it's got 30 offers before the day is over. So this has been a little bit of a relief for buyers out there. So it's been good. I mean, inventory is built up a little bit out there. You're starting to see some price reductions. Like you said, we're doing home inspections again, which is great. We're seeing, some seller paid closing costs, things like that coming back in. Inventory sitting on the market a little bit longer, so you're starting to see some of those reductions coming out price point wise, and it's getting still moving, but it's balancing a little bit.
It's getting to be just a tad more balanced, and a more balanced market is a great market for buyers. It's also a good market for sellers. Sellers have got to get their house prepped a little bit more because people are like, it's a cardboard box, but it's $800,000 and it was like 9 bids on it. So now we're prepping customers, or we're talking about how at this point we're really trying to make sure that the house is prepped. And tell me about the things that you go over when you take a listing and you're looking at a home. Tell me a little bit about, if you see rotted wood, if you see a cracked window, if you see a missing railing, which I'm shocked. And I say this all the time. I'm shocked at how many houses have missing railings. I have one going to my third floor attic where my daughter lives up on the third floor. She's got a flat up there, and it doesn't have a railing. Now, why it doesn't have a railing, I don't know. I bought the house. It doesn't have a railing. It still doesn't have a railing. Been there 15 years. And my nephew Riley's here, so we're going to put a railing up so that one of these days I can say we got a railing up. So, but how much prep work, how much do you get involved in coaching a customer about getting, the box delivered, declutterizing homes? Do you get involved with a customer? Are you saying, hey, listen, this wall is pretty worn right here. Let's throw, a coat of paint on it. Do you have experts that can help them with that type of stuff? Tell me a little bit about your process when looking at a home.
So whenever I meet with a potential seller, I always go into the house, take a look through, and I try to give them the eyes and ears of a buyer that's going to walk through that house, because people are usually their own worst critics of their property. Some people think they need to rebuild the whole thing in order to sell it, and in a lot of cases they don't need to. You just need to price it and market it correctly for what it actually is. So I try to give them just a good feel of, here's what I'm hearing and seeing from buyers as we walk through the property, so they can kind of get into that mindset. So if we do have issues, if there is things like rotting wood, if you're dealing with a house that's going to have a VA loan on it, for example, the handrails, like you said, VA or FHA loans are usually going to flag that as a problem that needs to be addressed. So if it's missing a handrail, a lot of times that's a easy and inexpensive fix that somebody could put on the house, or at the very least be prepared for that might happen if you have a buyer that's not doing a conventional loan or paying cash. So that might be something that comes up.
It could avoid the reinspection on that property altogether. Well, I like that. Do you talk about, are people talking about, hey, do I, swap out my fridge and is that something that's worth doing, or am I, hey, listen, the house really needs to be painted. I know you can put it on now, but a fresh coat of paint all the way around makes a difference. And do you have connections to be able to say, hey, I've got 3 painters in my Rolodex, man. We can get a quote here in 3 days, and we'll see if we can get them out, because we can probably paint all the way up until about October.
Yep, exactly. Those are all things we look at to see, hey, what kind of condition is it in? Would that make a big difference? If the house needs tons of work, then repainting a room that needs paint work isn't going to really make that big of a difference. But if it's a house that's, really great condition all in all, but they had a lot of pictures mounted on the walls, whatever, and they're taking them all down to prep it for sale, because depersonalizing it is something we always recognize when you're going to sell your house, declutter, depersonalize, things like that. To
there's
make
a
it
massive
appeal to them. But
there's a massive difference between living in a home and trying to sell a home. So that taking that personal stuff down and doing those things, I think, is really important. And people don't always want to do it, but listen, in today's market, if it's priced right, it's going to be under contract in less than, is 30 safe to say? 20?
Yeah, less than 30. I mean, it really depends on the house. The price point makes a big difference.
Location.
Location obviously is extremely important
Condition.
with it. Yep, all that stuff. So.
But if it's priced right, it should be between 15 and 30 days. Is that kind of the going term?
Typically, yeah. Sometimes even faster. It really just depends on the property and how desirable it is. And of course, where did you start it price point wise?
Right.
Some people have gotten into the mindset of thinking that you can ask any price you want for a house and someone's just going to buy it, and the reality is it needs to make sense. Then of course we run into the appraisal side of that if they're financing, if you're top of the price point and someone comes on board with that, they does not appraise for that number always. So sometimes it does, but not
crazy.
always. So. But those are all things to consider as we're going into it, and you don't want to age on market. You want to price it competitively, so that way it does attract a lot of buyers. You want it to sell fairly quickly, because usually if it sells quick, that's the most money coming your way as a seller, which is usually very important.
That's good. That's good. Would you still say, even in today's market, that the seller could do a seller rent back if they needed an extra 20 or 30 days to, maybe find their perfect house or close? Because transitioning is something, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the next segment that we do, but transitioning from one home, it's a lot for people to try to coordinate a buy and a sell, and a seller rent back is something that sometimes just gives us a little bit of time. Is that something that you can still see in today's market? We can still, hey, listen, we're going to sell our house, we're going to be flush with cash, we're going to pay you for 15 days of living there for whatever, $2,000, $3,000, whatever the math is, and we're going to move out instead of June 1st, we're going to move out June 15th. They'll allow some time to do some transition and make that new home. Is that still available, you think, in today's market?
It's not something we're really seeing a whole lot anymore. That was definitely a thing during the post-COVID, where everything was just insane. You list a property, you had 17 offers on it before the day was over. It was just insanity. So people were working in creative things like that. We're as we went through it, we're finding that insurance companies had a problem with that, because if you have a loan on the property, it has to be insured. So if the buyer is financing the property, then that creates an issue on the insurance end, is what I've been hearing from insurance companies. So we're not seeing that as much anymore. There's a lot of risk involved with that. So right now we're seeing, what I usually encourage for sellers: let's get your home completely ready for sales. That way it's ready to go on the market. Let's get our pictures taken. Let's get everything ready to launch. So that way we can go out shopping, find a property, and then we can just, we have to do some negotiating to make the deal work and make the sellers feel comfortable that we're going to come through and buy it, and then our home will sell quick. But that tends to be the best way to do it. Just be totally ready to go on the market, so that way as soon as you find something, hey, we're ready to go, we'll get it on the market this week. And a lot of times we're having success in getting that done. It's a little safer for everybody than the rent back option. So
I love it. Follow us to learn more. We're always going to have somebody on that's going to kind of give us from their eyes what's happening in the market out there. So, Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
You bet. Thanks, guys.